On today's show, it's signed, sealed, and delivered. We'll get into what the new CBA between the NHL and the Players Association means, plus an off-season stock market, which teams are trending up and down.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome inside this Wednesday, July 9th edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me over at Locked On Ottawa Senators 5 days a week. With me, as always, on Wednesdays, it is a Battle of Ontario edition from Locked On Maple Leafs. It is Mike DiStefano, and today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. I did. It works great. You can use code LOCKEDONNHL like I did at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Mikey, we had the Stanley Cup final. It rolled right into the draft. It rolled right into free agency. And now it's time to take a deep breath and see which teams got better and potentially worse.
Yeah, I mean, this is the time of the year where all the turnover happens, right? Like that little 2-week stretch from pre-draft through the draft to free agency, and then a couple days afterwards trickles out. That's when I'd say 90% of the heavy lifting gets done around the league, and that's where we see all the transformation of rosters. So that's pretty well done at this point. There's still some things that need to be done. Still a couple free agents out there, and we do expect for some trades to happen at some point throughout the offseason as well. So a bit of an incomplete offseason for some teams, but the first wave is officially in the books, I think we could say. So I think it makes sense to kind of reflect on the wave and pick some winners and losers to this point of the offseason.
I always remember the Pierre Dorion years where the Senators won the offseason. It almost feels like a death curse for your upcoming season. This team won the offseason.
You know what's interesting, though? Like, I knew that we were doing this exercise, obviously. So I was just kind of taking a peek, looking through some teams and looking at what happened. I don't know if there was like a bona fide winner in that respect. Like last year... Well, last year, Nashville, it was like, holy crap, what they did was incredible. The way that they were able to add Stamkos and Shea and Marchessault, like it was just a clear-cut win, right? But I think that there are some teams that got better, don't get me wrong, and made some solid moves, whether it's, through trades or for agency. But to me, there wasn't like a clear-cut, holy crap, this team is unquestionably the winner of the offseason. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like no one really like blew my socks off with, wow, that was insane what they were able to do.
Well, we'll discuss that a little later on the show. That's a capital T tease. But Mikey also teasing us on Twitter a couple days ago was Alan Walsh. You mentioned the other T word, trade. And there often is a late in the summer trade that just goes, wow. Latest I can remember is the Matthew Tkachuk one. I think that was end of July, early August. But there always seems to be one kind of, wow, oh man, like we're still working here. We're not always, all the GMs aren't always at the cottage all summer. And then we'll look at what Alan Walsh said, which is that there's a lot of teams right now with the cap going up that have space. They just don't have players to spend it on right now because the free agents, most of them ended up staying where they were. So I know that he's an agent and he's probably just stirring the pot to a certain degree. He may be known for doing that in the past, but I hope he's right because I do think there's some teams that I think kind of have put on a facade that they want to get better. But at the end of the day, their long-term plan should be centered around Gavin McKenna.
Yeah,
being in that lottery.
Yeah, there's going to be a handful of teams that should be in that mix. And Gavin McKenna, he's going to be a great talent, obviously. He had like made his decision to go to Penn State, and it was all made on ESPN.
That's a good sign.
You know what's hilarious, though? It was done on the 15-year anniversary of LeBron's the decision.
No way.
The date.
Talk about being one-upped.
I know, right? It's 15
Good
years
Canadian
later.
boy from Whitehorse
Well, July was yesterday, July 8th, 2010. You got LeBron making his decision that he's taking his talents to South Beach, big ESPN production. 15 years later, it's Gavin McKenna via Zoom making his big decision to go to ESP or to go to Penn State.
Yes, University Park, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, massive hockey powerhouse, Penn State, just like we all assumed that that's where the best hockey players go, right? Like that. I don't know, like, do you want to get into it, like the Gavin McKenna situation of him going to Penn State and just leaving the CHL to go to the NCAA, getting like a $700,000 NIL deal? Like, the CHL has to be pretty worried about this losing their star power moving forward. Like, I don't know about you, but if I were Dan McKenzie, the president of the CHL, I might be a little worried that this kind of opens the floodgates for a lot more guys to take off and make a heck of a lot more money playing in the NCAA than they would the CHL.
Well, case in point, the Victoria Royals have lost 3 players to this in the WHL. They just had another guy leave yesterday, but the big 2 went to North Dakota. Cole Reshney, first-round pick of the Calgary Flames, and then Keaton Verhoff. And get used to hearing that name. He is apparently the top defenseman in the 2026 draft. Obviously, there's plenty of time between now and then, but for that to already be the conversation this quick, like the rules change, and you've already seen an influx. Not only Gavin McKenna at Penn State, Jackson Smith, the top 15 pick of the Columbus Blue Jackets, also going to Penn State next season. And there's some whispers that they're not done, whether it's Porter Martone, who was drafted 6th overall by the Philadelphia Flyers, or maybe they pivot and go a different direction. I know Michael Misa's expectation is that he's going to make the San Jose Sharks, but he is also a guy, look at Penn State's roster. His brother just transferred to Penn State from the Ontario Hockey League. So this is, to me, going to dictate just a change. I don't think it's as earth-shattering in terms of the viability of the Canadian Hockey League. I just think it's going to become more of a 16, 17-year-old league, whereas you'll play your 2 seasons in there. And McKenna's a different story because he had the exceptional status. So for him to go back for, I know he only played 16 games in that first year, but like to go back for a 4th season in the WHL when you torched the league to 129 points in 56 games, add another 38 in 16 playoff games, it just felt like it's the right move to go out and play against 22, 23-year-olds and deeper lineups. Because I think the OHL and the WHL, and to a lesser extent, with all due respect to the Q, they just don't have the same talent pool to be choosing from. I just think that you're getting that pro experience playing as often as you are. So I think the top dogs who expect to go right to the NHL as a first year after the draft type player will stay in the CHL, with, of course, the exceptional status players being the exception. And like McKenna had to have fast-tracked school as well to be able to do this. So there's a lot of factors to even have the eligibility at his age to do this.
Well, he's a late birthday. He's a late 07. So, when you look at
very late, December 20.
December. So he could have been drafted last year, but because of that, like, I'm assuming he finished high school. He finished high school this year. So this only really works. Like, it is kind of a perfect storm for Gavin McKenna specifically. It only works because he's a late birthday and he graduated from high school this season. Whereas typically your draft year is your high school season, where you wouldn't, be going off and being able to play. It was kind of like Austin Matthews, same thing. He went and played in Zurich, remember, in his draft year. So it was a bit of a perfect storm. I think you're right, though. Like the CHL, I think a lot more USHLers will end up in the Canadian Hockey League. A lot of guys who went to the BCHL, the OJHL, stuff like that, the SJHL. I think that they'll more likely play in the Canadian Hockey League now because it's not considered a amateur league or whatever, and because the NCAA has now opened up this capabilities of playing in the Canadian Hockey League, and you could still go and get your money and go to the NCAA afterward. I think you'll see a lot more players take that route now as well. So you're correct. I do think that you're still going to have the top players play in the CHL, but it's just going to be ages 16 and 17. And then probably you'll see a lot more of these overagers kind of take off to the NCAA and make a little bit more money. And, it's more of a better development curve potentially once you're drafted when you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. I just think it's just going to make the CHL much younger, and they'll be able to pull from other pools. But I think there's going to be a big ripple effect, and there'll be a big change to development and how these, major junior leagues all work and coexist over the next few years. Should be interesting to follow.
And they also still have the import draft, right? And some of those kids who are maybe
They'll probably
not...
get more. They'll probably get more of these
Right.
kids coming over at a younger age now.
Exactly.
So yeah, like
The USHL is definitely the league that's going to suffer the most.
probably. I think that's possible. But American kids, like not a lot of them want to come to Canada though. So
Oh yeah, for the show HL, come on.
I mean, but will it be the show HL for much longer? Like
We'll find
that's what I
out.
mean. We'll find out exactly. Like I think the USHL has done a pretty good job of pumping out a lot of talent over the years, and you can stay in America and then you can go to college still. And like unless the OHL and well the CHL, I guess they're gonna have to beef up like what they're offering kids.
Yeah, I
Though.
don't think $50 in gas money a week is going to cut it anymore.
Right. So I think that they will probably start, and they'll have to have some sort of, kickback to these kids, incentives for these kids to go over and play there now.
Yeah, well, it's going to be fascinating to watch. And if you want to learn more about it, you can go find that everywhere. Basically, people are talking about the new deal. And with Gavin McKenna, the projected, I want to say, with my tongue firmly in my cheek, I will go out on a limb and say he will be the first overall pick in the 2026 NHL draft, going to Penn State. Lots of ripple effects will be seen. We want to learn more about the new CBA. So we're going to tell you what we noted from the ratification. So it's all done. There will be no work stoppage. And why would there be? The league seems like it's in better health than it has been maybe ever. And what about the team's health? The offseason stock market, who's trending up and down? That's all next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I have it myself. I got it a few months ago and I love it. I'm on there almost every day, making sure my purchases add up and that I'm sticking within my budget. I love that you can take control of your finances, and all of their tools are interactive and easy to use. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Go to Locked On NHL, the code at monarchmoney.com at 50% off, 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code Locked On NHL, and you'll get half off your first year. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For your second listen, make sure to go check out all the great local shows that we have. If a player gets picked up from another team, why don't you go check out that Locked On podcast and get the sense of what that fan base is thinking about the player you just acquired. I'm Ross Levitan over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. With me is Mike DiStefano from Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. And Mikey, thank goodness there is no drama around the new CBA. It felt like it was done in the background quietly. No big button issues that ended up getting negotiated through the media. And the league will be ready to rock and roll for years to come.
Yeah, we got labor peace through 2030. So at least another 5 years where we won't have to worry about hearing collective bargaining agreement and revenue share and all those other buzzwords that get thrown around whenever we hear about the CBA agreement. And it was very clean. It was a very clean negotiation. Definitely the cleanest of the Gary Bettman tenure, that's for sure. I think it's a testament just to how good of a spot the league is financially. Like, when you're adding teams to the mix, and they have over the last couple of years with Vegas and with Seattle, and you're adding a lot of influx of cash into these groups, and apparently there could be more teams coming in, and now that expansion fee was set at like $2 billion. So could be even more money coming into the jeans of a lot of these owners. So everyone in a pretty good spot, and everyone's on the same page, I guess, at least for the next 5 years when it comes to how the CBA was negotiated here. Some interesting changes will be made. We can go through those, but the most notable change that I think is getting the most kind of talk right now is the fact that the regular season will be moving from an 82 games to 84 games. So adding 2 extra regular season matchups for each team at the expense of a few preseason games. Now, I think the preseason is too long, but I also do not believe that we needed to add more regular season games here, though.
Well, it's not the first time. The NHL tried this for 2 seasons,
Yeah.
from 1992 to 1994, and those extra 2 games were neutral site games.
Yeah. Well, why did they stop? Any idea?
You know what? I
'Cause
bet you
it was a
'cause
resounding success. They made too much money. It was too successful. Everyone loved it. So they said, you know what? We can't handle the success level of this. We got to go back to 82. Is that what happened?
Oh, 92, 92. They actually just felt bad for the Ottawa Senators coming into the league and having 70 losses in their first season. So they're like, you know what? It would have been 68, right? Like, let's have a little respect here. No,
I
jokes
guess.
aside, you know what? There's on 32 Thoughts, obviously the premier podcast with Elliot Friedman and Kyle Bukauskas. They had on the thought line, somebody
Yeah, I heard
noted
that.
in, and I actually love it. Like, instead of a neutral site game that's spread all over, why not have like a celebration of hockey weekend in the Tri-City area where you have New Jersey, New York Islanders, and the Rangers stadiums, or even Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal could be an option too, where you gather the entire league for a weekend, and basically like a minor hockey league tournament where it's like one game after the other. Like that, to me, would definitely get eyeballs on it. People would be talking because it would be something different. I think there's room for creativity here. I don't think they'll do it, but I think that could be a really fun idea if the NHL wanted to kind of try something new and flex a muscle that could either flop and then you just don't do it anymore, or it could be a success.
It would be a fun thing to do. I would almost look at it, if you want to do something like that, right? Do it maybe every other year, and instead of like, no one cares about an all-star game anymore, let's be honest. So instead of that, like, have a mini tournament where each team does play 2 games in that city or within that area. You might even be able to throw Buffalo into that as well. Just get 4 rinks up and running. You have 4 ranks, you got 32 teams. You kind of let them go at each other for each team plays 2 games. You spread it out amongst the 4 ranks so that fan bases of those cities can get a chance to see different teams play, and you just set it up like as a little mini tournament. It's possible, I guess. Like, you could maybe do something like that. I think it's unlikely. I don't know if the owners are too interested in taking away an extra home game, which is exactly what would end up happening here. But yeah, it's definitely a creative way of doing a couple extra games. But I still think, like, instead of adding 2, I would have rather subtract 2 games. Like, it's already a bit of a watered down product where the last 2-3 weeks of the regular season, like, 28 of the 32 teams are like, all right, let's go. Let's just get to the playoffs. Let's get this thing going. Like, let's just finish this up. Like, we just don't want to get hurt. We're barely playing our stars. They're, it gets down to load management the last couple of games. So I don't know. Adding 2 more to me just meh. I guess it's extra hockey. It's extra revenue at the end of the day, which is why it's happening. But I don't think for the watchability aspect, it doesn't move the needle for me. That's for sure.
There's some other changes, and I don't think we have time to dive into each and every one of them. It is notable there is a playoff salary cap system coming in, a
Yeah.
significant increase to the players' playoff fund. Again, players don't make money off their contracts in the playoffs, but there is a bonus fund set up, so that's going to be a lot bigger. The dress code is gone.
Thank goodness. Another thing that I was really worried about. I'm glad that they were able to figure that one out.
I actually have a question for you about that on the other side. But the last thing I want to note, because I love international hockey, the 2030 Olympics are guaranteed as well.
Yeah, and there's a couple other things I think are really interesting too. Players' minimum salaries, I think, moving up to $1 million, which is good. The other thing that's hilarious: permanent e-bugs will now be employed, and we'll get to
Where do I sign up?
Practice, dude. You should. Former goalie like yourself. I mean,
Let's go.
That's what it's going to be. It's not as though they're going to go out and sign like actual third goalies and backup goalies. Like, Matt Murray was the third goalie for the Leafs this year, but he was playing in the Marlies, but he was like the call up backup type guy. He's not going to be an e-bug. Like, he wants to play, right? Like they're going to still get, like ECHL goalies or journeyman guys or players who are maybe thinking about retirement. And it's like, well, just hang around. Like, maybe we can throw you out there, worst case scenario, but we throw you, I don't know, chunk of change just to be here just in case. And so that is now going to be a thing. Permanent emergency backup goaltenders who can get paid.
Yeah. Well, we're missing out on moments like the Senators had last year where their e-bug was stuck in traffic on the way to the rink and was running down a 2-lane highway with his bag over his shoulder.
That's the most famous e-bug story you can think of. Okay, that's interesting.
No, I'm talking about last season. But what happened? Was it Carolina?
I don't recall. I don't
Zamboni driver?
Something like that. I think I remember hearing something about that. Yeah, so there will no longer be Zamboni drivers.
Only time I've ever bet on the Toronto Maple Leafs was live during that game over at FanDuel.
I'm glad it screwed you. Glad it screwed you, Ross. I'm glad it screwed you.
Yeah, now I know how you feel, eh? All right. On the other side, who got better, who got worse? That's next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Welcome back, Locked On NHL, your team every day. Shout out to the everydayers making us your first listen. We are here all summer long. Offseason? What offseason? But it is time to catch our breath and look at all the moves that were made. Who won the offseason? I say with a bit of a grit to my teeth, because it is sometimes, always not a good thing.
Sometimes, always. 100% of the time, 87% of the time, it sucks. Yeah, like I was saying earlier in the show, I don't think anyone ran away with the offseason. Like, I think there's some teams that obviously did well and improved, but it's not as though they made 4 or 5 outstanding additions where it's like, holy crap, this team's going to crush it this year. Like Nashville last year, undisputed, unquestioned winners of the offseason. To me, there wasn't one like that. There were a couple teams I think definitely did well, and I would say have positioned themselves to succeed next year. The team that I believe, I would consider the winner of the pack, though, I really like what Montreal did. Montreal's the team for me that I want to give some love to. And it wasn't really through free agency. It's not like they went out and they added a bunch of guys in the free agent market. I don't think they actually made any, solid additions, but they got busy in the trade market. They started out on draft day, bringing in Noah Dobson from the Islanders. That was a great pickup for them. Throw him up on the top line. He's a point getter. He's a two-way guy. They really needed someone on the right side who could be, a force defensively. So Noah Dobson can be that. And I really like that Zach Bolduc trade when they were able to move off of Logan Mailloux and bring in a bona fide, top 9 power forward who scored 19 goals as a rookie. Could see him taking steps, being a perennial 25-goal power forward in the league. Like, who doesn't want that? Especially when you look at all the skill they have in Montreal. They need a little bit of grit, and Zach Bolduc kind of fits in like a glove there. So to me, I thought the Montreal Canadiens were the team that I was most impressed with the moves that they made this offseason.
Yeah, Kent Hughes clearly understands that he's got this window now where his young players are good enough to be competitive, but not good enough that they're strapping you on the salaries just yet.
Mm-hmm.
So they're deciding, hey, let's bring in a few high-paid players. Dobson gets that enormous contract. We'll see how that ages. Islanders fans kind of felt like it was time for them to move on from him as well. He has had an unbelievable season or two before. Last year wasn't his best, but the Habs are betting on him bouncing back, and I think it's a really reasonable bet to make. But I agree that the Bolduc trade was shocking to me that they were able to get him. And after getting Dobson, Logan Mailloux became an expendable piece. They already have such a young back end. Getting the age difference and having Dobson there instead of the position that eventually Mailloux would have grown into, I think that's a huge win for them. But funny enough, my winners of the offseason is the team that traded Noah Dobson. I think the New York Islanders have rejuvenated their fan base, and they've rejuvenated the way that I expect them to play. They were no doubt the most boring team to watch in the National Hockey League for the last number of years. And I'm counting moving on from Lou Lamoriello and bringing in Matthew Darche as a part of their offseason. It was. That's what started the trickle-down effect to them making the Dobson trade. But the fact that Victor Eklund and Kashawn Aitchison fall to where they were able to get them in the middle of the first round added to the fact they get Matthew Schaefer at the first overall pick when they jumped up in the lottery. Like, if you start this at the time the regular season ended, when the Islanders played their last game, they're the no doubt winners of the offseason just from winning the lottery and moving from 10 to 1. Like, that in itself is such a boost for them. Bringing in Jonathan Drouin, I think, also kind of exemplifies that they want to change the way they play. Now it's going to come down to whether Patrick Waugh is on board with that or if he's going to stay with his stubborn, structured self and make sure that they play that low event style of game. But I really like what the Islanders did this offseason, and I think that bringing in another Russian on a one-year entry level, it's a low-risk move, but this Maxim Shabanov guy could have some offensive upside for them. You know, it's always hit or miss when guys come over from playing well in the KHL. I just think that if you're a fan of a team, I don't think any fan base has changed their perception of their organization this summer more than the New York Islanders.
Yep, that's fair. I think losing Dobson's going to be a bit of that's going to hurt for sure, especially since the prospects they traded or the draft picks they traded for, like, those guys aren't going to play this year, maybe not next year. It might take a couple of years for them to get there. But for a team, if you're talking about, you know, a squad rebuilding or retooling for a couple of years down the road, yeah, I think Matthew Darche and the Islanders did a pretty good job of doing what they had to do. And Matthew Schaefer, kid's a stud on the ice, off the ice. Going to be an outstanding Islander for many years.
I think we're probably. Why don't we do 3-2-1 on this? Because I think we might have the same loser.
Ooh,
3,
okay.
2, 1. The LA Kings.
Yeah.
My goodness, Kenny Holland. He's got a type.
Wasting money this year. I don't know exactly what made him give Cody Ceci $4.5 million again.
Yeah,
again. Like,
and moving off of a player in Jordan Spence, and I'm not saying this just because he came to Ottawa, but the fan base seemed to be up in arms that A, he wasn't given the opportunity to get a bigger role on the team, and B, you then replace his spot on the depth chart with Cody Ceci. Yeah. And look, I like Anton Forsberg, but that's the backup goalie. You're still paying him over $2 million for. Then you go, and I didn't like any of their moves this offseason, to be honest with you.
It's clear that they have a motive to get bigger on the back end with the moves that they made. Like, you know, Cody Ceci is undoubtedly a bigger player than Jordan Spence. They play a different style. So I guess that would answer, you know, as to why they did that. But yeah, this is a team. They had a Corey Perry, which is okay. But yeah, I thought they got older and slower. And I don't think that's the way to have success in the NHL. Bigger, sure, but you got to be big and fast in the modern NHL, not just big. They left out the fast part.
Yes, and it's unfortunate because I love Anze Kopitar as a player and Drew Doughty, and I feel like they deserve better at this point in their career. Brian Dumoulin was the other player they brought in this offseason, and Joel Armia they're paying. I mean, he's a decent player, but where does he fit in that lineup? Is he going to be a fourth line guy? We'll see. They had to make change, obviously, after losing for the Edmonton Oilers. Third or fourth straight year? A lot.
Fourth, I think. Yeah, 4 years in a row.
Got to make changes, but I just don't feel like they made the right ones. Let us know in the comments who you think had the best and the worst offseason so far. There's still time to regroup and retool, and we'll be here next Wednesday to break it all down. More summer content coming as well. For today, we say goodbye. For Mike DiStefano, I'm Ross Levitan, and this has been another edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, your team every day.